pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item 1.03, adoption of the agenda. It is recommended that the agenda for the October 9, 2019 regular meeting of the Board of School Trustees be adopted as presented.
Move for motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Moving now into the recognition section of the agenda, item 2.01, Early College Student of the Month. Ms. Mann.
Good evening. Good evening, Board. I'm here tonight to introduce our Early College Student of the Month, Rachel Gomez. So Rachel has been in our program since she came to the high school, but she is a lifelong Mishawaka student. She went to Twin Branch Elementary School where she was in our DEEP program. And she told me that Mrs. Evaldi, who looped with her 5th and 6th grade, was one of her favorite teachers ever. So I just want to shout out to our DEEP programs and our elementary school teachers for the impact that they have on our kids. We are incredibly proud of Rachel. She is amazing. So she is going to earn 62 college credits by the time she graduates. She will be our second early college cohort and the first cohort to earn associate's degrees. And if you've been on this journey with us, you remember that we didn't think we would achieve associate degrees for a couple of years at least into the program. But Rachel has been using our course offering guide very, very well and making sure that her schedule matched up with what she needed to be taking. So I was surprised when I audited the transcripts and saw that Rachel was going to get all the way there so early. And to make that even more impressive, Rachel has been at the EACC for half days for junior and senior year. She's also going to get her EMT certificate and her EKG certificate. So she's going to come out with more letters after her name than most of us. And she's an incredible athlete. She's been on our soccer team for 4 years and our tennis team since last year. And I didn't know you could get a hat trick in soccer, but you can. I thought it was only a hockey thing. And Rachel recently earned, 3 goals in one game, which I guess is unheard of. She's a striker. We're super proud of her. This is for you. Thank you. And I just want to mention that in order to get an associate's degree, students have to take certain classes that are required, right? So we have our dual credit offerings at the high school that are really flexible and let kids take all the classes, but the associate's degree, there is a required writing class that we didn't have scheduled, and Mrs. Gerber got certified for it, built a curriculum, and agreed to teach it for the 5 kids that we predict will get an associate's degree. And then Mrs. Yoder stepped up to do the capstone class and got certified to teach it and built a curriculum, and so she's going to be doing that as independent study after school in the spring so that those 5 kids who are so busy with everything else they're doing can finish that piece.
Now, you said 62 credits?
62 college credits is what I predict she will have.
Well into her junior year then, isn't it?
Indeed.
College just got a lot.
Fantastic.
Well, that's just really remarkable. You're a real inspiration. Is there anything you'd like to say, Ms. Gomez? we don't bite.
I don't know.
Well, while you're thinking, I would like to say something. I met Rachel this year. My daughter plays soccer with her, and she's only a freshman. And Franny is a very young freshman, and she's very immature. But, and I mean that in the best way I know how to say it. But she's very immature, and Rachel is a senior, and they play the same position. They're both strikers. So what Francis has learned from Rachel this year in the soccer program is leadership, taking ownership, being captain, being the leader. And for a senior to take a freshman up and hold on to her and teach her and guide her is a huge deal. So I would say not only are you a very busy young woman and you have a great future ahead of you, you have been an incredible leader and a teacher to the underclassmen of the soccer team. So I would like to say thank you for that.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for having the dual credit programs and allowing us to go to the Career Center and partnering with them because it's really helped me with looking at colleges in the future as well.
And what are
Thank
your
you.
plans for next year?
Right now I'm looking into Holy Cross for a soccer scholarship, but I don't know yet.
Well, best wishes to you. And again, this is just a remarkable achievement. And thank you, Ms. Mann, for being involved with this and pushing it forward. And this is always a bright spot in our agenda for these meetings.
Yep.
We're very proud of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 2.02, recognition of Janice White from the Growing Together Preschool Program. Ms. Michaelis.
Sorry, you're
Ms.
stuck
Hickle.
with me. Clearly, I'm not Mrs. Michaelis. But I am truly honored to be able to do this for her because this particular person holds a special place in my heart as she has educated 3 out of 4 of my children. So I can speak personally to the impact she has had. But tonight what I'd like to do is to recognize Janice White and our Growing Together preschool program. Janice White is currently the director of our Growing Together preschool program, which is an inclusive preschool through School City of Mishawaka. She has worked in the field of early education for close to 30 years in positions ranging from teacher to director. Janice is incredibly proud of her team and the impact that the program has had on the community. Recently, Janice was nominated by several of her colleagues to be spotlighted in the Inspired Ed Early, which is a newsletter that comes out from the Indiana Department of Education. So last Friday, Janice was the one educator that was chosen to be highlighted in that, and that went out to everyone from the IDOE in the state of Indiana. All of the nominations highlighted her passion for serving children and families, her strong leadership skills, and her dedication to quality improvement. One of her colleagues had this to say about Janice. Janice exudes passion in all that she does. She exhibits strong leadership skills and works directly with staff members to develop leaders in a culture of excellence. Janice has strong parent-family interaction skills and ensures teachers are teaching using developmentally appropriate practices that are in line with early learning foundations. She seeks to educate the whole child in a program that is trauma-informed. Janice is a team player that works diligently to collaborate with all stakeholders. Janice is a learner, a teacher, and truly a wonderful individual. Thank you, Janice, for everything you do for our young children and our families, as well as all of her colleagues in the Growing Together preschool program. So if we could have Janice and all of her peers that are with us here today stand to be recognized. Thank you.
Ms. White, is there anything you'd like to?
Yeah, just, I think we have a great program, and we have a great team of educators. We all work together for the children and for our families. That's everything. The kids are, this is why we do it. It's hard work, but it's such important work that we do.
And we're so glad you do, and you do it so well. And as you know, early childhood is one of our most important commitments because that's where all the building starts on that foundation. And I see you, and I'm not surprised you're giving all the credit to your team, but you don't have a great team without great leadership. So thank you.
Thank you.
Now we'll move into the comments and questions from the floor section of the agenda. Item 3.01, representatives of the PTA. Is there anyone from the PTA who'd like to address the board? Moving on then to 3.02, representatives of the school employees. 3.03, representatives of the Mishawaka Education Foundation. Of course.
This is too exciting. Okay, guys, I won't put you on the spot, but if you do not have your ticket, Holly and I both have quite a handful to share, and we're edging on 700 sold. We want to get to that 1,000, and what does that mean? Will you do it? 300 times $50. We got to do it, and all of you can help. I know that the state says you can't sell the ticket, but Holly and I will appear at whoever's door you find.
Shall we lock the doors until they're all sold?
Yeah, and
You know?
don't go to Martin's because I've accosted several people that, they told me no when they first saw me. And I was checking out and they both came up and gave me 50. So, anyway, it works, guys. Anyway, this is a huge week for the foundation and for School City because the money comes back to us. And our big Growing the Future dinner is October 17th, a week from Thursday. We have about 200 items that are already being bid on. The company we are part of this year is a national company. So we have people in Connecticut, California, who knows where, bidding on items. And so our profits will go. And we're excited to have about 300 at the dinner, which is more than we've ever had, to recognize Dr. Spiker and his team, Bruce Staley and Mike Pettibone and Bill Welling. And at that, of course, we will be drawing the raffle, right, Holly?
Absolutely. I can't wait.
Yeah. We have a lot of paybacks, Holly and I, but we are going to sell 1,000.
If I
And
knock on your door this week, when I will,
yeah,
make sure you answer the door.
yeah, it's good. It's good because we have a window, guys. Who, when I tell people that Holly and her team were able to get this given, nobody can believe it. Who gives a $34,000 gift? And it may be a one-time shot. Knowing Holly, probably not. But we can't let those tickets go unsold. So help us, help us. I just want to say one other thing. You guys probably have heard of the TRIO, which is School City, the Alumni Association, and Mishawaka Education Foundation. And that trio is just doing great stuff with our alumni. And there's two big events coming up for that. One is an alumni plaza event that they're going to do wine and cheese mixer. And we're doing several things at the new Chicory Cafe. And so if you know alumni or you just want to come and be an alum with us. And then the all-class reunion will be there this year, and it's going to be scheduled for May. So exciting stuff. I'll be here.
Thank you. Item 3.04, general public. Is there anyone from the public who signed up to address the board? All right, then we'll move on to the consent agenda section. Item 4.01, approval of the minutes of the September 25, 2019 regular meeting of the Board of School Trustees. It is recommended that the minutes of the September 25, 2019 regular meeting of the board be approved as presented. Item 4.02, approval of bill warrants and payroll. It is recommended that the bill warrants and payroll in the amount of $3,329,494.41 be approved for payment from the appropriate funds. Item 4.03, acceptance of donations. It is recommended that the Board of School Trustees accept the donations as listed and documented. It's 33 monitors from U.S. General Services Administration, computers for learning program for any school city at Mishawaka School as needed. School supplies estimated at $100 from Vineyard Church to Hums Elementary School, and $167.66 from Hums PTO for the Nature Center at Hums Elementary School. Item 4.04, approval of the consent agenda. Is there a recommendation that the Board of School Trustees approve this consent agenda?
Move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We hadn't had anything listed under the Vision Initiatives section, but I understand that Dr. Barker does have something he'd like to say.
Yes, thank you, President Curry. I want to comment on an incident that we were made aware of at John Young Middle School. Yesterday, school administrators found out about an inappropriate mass email that was sent to all middle school students late on Monday evening. As a result, school administrators sent a letter to parents yesterday through Skyward, our student information system, updating them on the ongoing investigation. Today, the student responsible for sending the email was identified and admitted to sending it. We will not be commenting regarding that student's discipline and/or legal consequences. However, as a result of that confession, school administrators sent another letter to parents through Skyward to inform them of this outcome. It's also important to note that we have made changes in technology to not allow students to send mass emails or create email groups going forward. Finally, I want to comment on the social media posts that were broadcast by members of the public. It is very important to note that the student responsible for sending this email accessed another student's email account without that student's permission or knowledge. Unfortunately, some of these social media posts included screenshots of the inappropriate email, including names of students. I'm asking people to refrain from speculation and identifying students in social media posts. In this case, a student's name was publicly broadcast that was innocent and unknowing. This is not a way for us to treat students in our community. We do encourage you to directly share information with our school administrators to help us resolve issues that happen in our schools. We appreciate the students, parents, and staff members who made us aware of this incident yesterday morning. Additionally, I want to commend our administrators and the Mishawaka Police Department who worked through the investigation to reach this conclusion.
Thank you. We'll move on. There's nothing under the reports and discussion items section of the agenda, so we'll move on to human resources. Item 7.01, the personnel report. Mr. Calderon.
Yeah, President Curry, Superintendent Barker, and school board members, it is recommended that the personnel report dated September 25th, 2019 be approved as presented.
Move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the report as presented. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 7.02, recommendation to approve agreement with New Avenues for the Employee Assistance Program. Ms. Sanders?
Thank you so much for allowing me to come and speak tonight about our Employee Assistance Program. I wanted to start with talking to you guys a little bit about why we need an Employee Assistance Program. So let me kind of delve into this a little bit more with you guys. This is Jane. She's our everyday employee, teacher. I'm thinking as relaxed as she looks, it's probably the first day of school and the first hour of the first day of school. But when you look a little bit deeper on what's going on in Jane's mind and her life, you're gonna see that there's a lot going on. She has positive things like, it was a beautiful sunrise this morning, and then negative things like who's gonna take care of mom when she gets out of the hospital. And now you're all sitting here wondering, this is what's going in your mind, where I'm going with this. Sarah and Darlene and I have been talking a lot about the whole employee and what that looks like and where we can go with that. And when you Google the whole employee, the first thing that appears is an article called Employee Engagement Involves Bringing the Whole Self to Work, which is basically saying that if we stop our employees from bringing 100% of themselves to work, if we say you can't bring that problem or you can't, bring your stress to work, then we're not going to get 100% results from those employees. So we need to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to help them and they can bring their whole self to work. The article goes on to talk about the poll for the 100 greatest places to work. And the one thing that correlated between all of those places and what the employees had to say about them is management cares about me as a person, not just an employee. So our EAP program is just one of the ways that we can show our employees that we really care about them as a person and not just as an employee. Now I'll go to what I was actually asked to talk about. So Since the board approved the EAP program in September of 2018, and we implemented it November 1st, this is 10 months worth of data, we've had 41 people call to get services. And you can't really see it very well, but it was requested they break down the problem. So 27 of those people, their problem was anxiety or stress. Another 15 had depression in there. They also, in the report, shows the problems affecting work that they self-report. So 2 of the people said that they were having problems that caused issues with their attendance at work. Another 5 people said they were struggling with focusing at work. And then you'll see 3 for performance at work and 3 for relationships at work. So a couple of things that I didn't get to put on here, really because I ran out of room on the slide. There's also financial issues that were addressed, and they've sent 3 people to get financial counseling through Green Path Debt Solutions. So we've had 2 management referrals with New Avenues where they've helped us deal with some employees that, they were struggling with the whole employee, and we were trying to help them in any way that we could, and they really helped us navigate that and help the employee. And they've actually given us 25 hours of activities, so trainings for the employees. They were at the health fair, they went to the Whole Child and worked for us. It's well beyond what they were contracted to do for us. So our agreement with New Avenues has been really great. So the cost has not went up at all. It's still approximately $14,500 annually. And at this time, I would recommend that the board approve the continuation of our agreement with New Avenues.
Can I ask a question? So with those 41 employees that have gone, have we seen an improvement in their whole person here? Or,
So we don't know that.
Or we don't get the feedback?
We get the basics of what's going on, like this breakdown. You guys actually have the report that we get. Part of the great thing about this program and the reason that employees feel that they can use it is we don't know who's using it. It's confidential. The only ones that we know are the 2 that we've sent for manager referrals. And of those 2, I will say that one of them we've had a great deal of help with, and they've truly helped the other one quit. So.
Well,
Sorry. Every place I've worked, we've had an employee assistance program, and it becomes very helpful, especially like in a situation that our team was in earlier this year when one of our staff died unexpectedly. So this program isn't just for, maybe you're having troubles at home, but maybe something happened and an employee at work suddenly passed away.
Yes, part of our contract is have crisis management.
And so this is just an incredible program, and this is really important for us to have, just to make sure that our employees know that we care, but also it's just another avenue to give them, to find the help they need when they need it.
Well, I agree with that. With our commitment to developing the whole child, we'd be very remiss in not providing the same sort of services for our people who tend to those children. This is just a logical extension of our commitment to that kind of a philosophy as part of our culture. So, and thank you for that. That was a very good presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Is there any more questions? All right. Is there a motion to approve the agreement as presented?
Move for a motion. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Ms. Sanders. Moving into the curriculum, instruction, and technology section of the agenda, item 8.01, principal appreciation. Ms. Hickel.
Thank you. I'm pretty lucky tonight because I just keep recognizing all of our wonderful employees. We have the opportunity many times in curriculum and instruction to share the hard work of our teachers and students. But one group that we need to recognize more often because they are the forefront of change. They are in our buildings, leading the way daily, and keeping up with us are our principals. October is National Principals Month. We decided today that they deserved a lot more than a month, but we'll start with a month. So at this time, any of our principals that are in the audience, if you could please stand. I read a quote this week from the National Principals Association that said, "A great principal builds character, inspires dreams, encourages creativity, builds confidence, instills learning, touches hearts, and changes lives." And while that certainly describes our principals, as I reflected on this, I realized I would need to add about 30 more descriptors to the work that they do daily that impacts the lives of our students, our teachers, our staff, our families, and the community. So thank you for all that you do. That's it.
Well, and I think we all agree. I mean, I don't think anybody works harder than the principals. You know, every child in your school is your child. Every staff member in the school is your colleague. You're never off task during the school. You're constantly juggling I don't know how many balls. And then after school, you're at all the events. And it's a very, very difficult job, and we're very proud of our principals who do that so well. So thank you for everything that you do. Any other comments from the board? Okay.
I just remember every one of my principals, and I spent a lot of time in their offices.
And see what a great job they did. It's all due to you.
Changing lives.
Yes, changing lives.
I feel I gave them a lot of training.
All right. 8.02, School City of Mishawaka Early Literacy Program. Ms. Stocksell and Ms. Hickle.
We also brought a special guest with us, Mrs. Hicksonbaugh. It's one thing to tell you about the great work that they do, but we like to share them too. So tonight we'd like to focus on our early literacy program, and specifically to focus on the ways in which we've been trying to create a systematic approach that truly transforms our practice. We'll focus on IREAD 3 remediation, literacy interventions, programming, and specifically our approach to dyslexia legislation. Just briefly want to start with IREAD legislation for those people who may be less familiar with IREAD 3. IREAD 3 was passed, the legislation for that was passed in 2010. It focuses specifically on screening third graders as a predictive for reading measures, and also puts in place legislation that if a student doesn't pass IREAD 3, schools are to then work with them, provide remediation and instruction. It also can result in grade retention. So what you're seeing up on the screen are our most recent IREAD 3 scores for last year. IREAD 3, the assessment itself, is broken up to assess 3 specific components: foundational reading skills, comprehension of nonfiction, and then comprehension of literature. Those results are our overall student scores. So you can see that our highest proficiency is in foundational skills, with our lowest score being the focus on comprehension of nonfiction average percentage. If you look at the next one, this is showing the results for our students who did not pass IREAD 3. The reason that we highlight this is not to focus on those who struggled, but this data was particularly telling for us. Traditionally, in reading remediation, the majority of reading remediation focuses on foundational skills. When we drilled into our IREAD 3 data and found that even of our students who did not pass IREAD 3, 69% of them were proficient in foundational reading skills. To give them an intervention and remediation that focuses once again on foundational reading skills was not going to improve the 2 lower categories, which was clearly the areas we needed to improve on. So we really had to change the way in which we are addressing remediation for our students that didn't pass IREAD 3.
So as we analyzed our data, we found a few bright spots, a few areas where we were succeeding. And one such place was Beaker. And we wanted to know what was going on at Beaker. So we went and we investigated, and we learned they were using a program called Level Literacy Intervention. And so we wanted to learn more, so we cross-referenced that with research to confirm it was an evidence-based intervention, and we selected it to use it for our intervention for our students who did not pass IREAD 3. It's systematic and focuses on accelerating learning while engaging them in rich literacy books. We got a kit for each school, And we had trained our teachers by having our teachers from Beeger train them. So instead of bringing another trainer in, we used one of our Beeger intervention teachers to train our teachers who would be delivering the iRead 3 remediation. We also found some bright spots in our use of reading aids. This is a digital learning program, and we use it for our K through second grade students. So we had not historically used it with our third grade students, but we found a lot of success in our use. So we said we need to use this with our third grade students who did not pass iRead 3. So along with level literacy intervention, we use reading aids and level literacy intervention after school for an hour with an interventionist, a School City of Mishawaka teacher, and we did 23 sessions, an hour of each. This was, we wanted to ensure that our teachers were prepared, so we provided that initial professional learning, but then we provided weekly professional learning. So we wanted to support them in the implementation process because they were just learning level literacy intervention. So we would send them videos, reflection prompts, and more information so they had the opportunity to collaborate as they were implementing. We also used many different ways to evaluate the progress. We wanted to know how our students were doing and where we needed to adjust. And today we brought Karen Hixenbaugh. She was one of our iRead 3 teachers that remediated students after school, and she's going to give you her teacher experience and the more information about the impact on her students.
So, I'm a little shorter. This is my first time speaking at a school board meeting, but I'm just going to do the best I can. So, I've been teaching iRead 3 students about 10 years since they started this test. And you know the Pinterest, and you go online and you find all these great, cute activities that teach foundational skills. We were doing a great job at that. And like Katie said, we weren't doing a good job with the reading portion, the nonfiction and the fiction reading and the comprehension piece. So the LLI kit that they purchased it's a leveled literacy intervention, and it builds on the kids' skills, and the books are very engaging. And the assessments that go along with it kind of correlate with your iRead 3 test and your iReady test, which is the big stakes test that the kids want to do well at. So that was a great, I mean, these guys researched it, did a great job with it. And we also used in our iRead remediation groups the reading eggs. It's a computer program, and it kind of takes you on a reading journey. And as you progress, you get to play games, and everybody knows that kids like games on the computer. So in order to get to those games, they were wondering, why is he playing a game and I'm not? And I would share with them, well, you haven't progressed enough, and as soon as you do, you will get to play one of those games. We started our intervention with the kids taking an inventory, which was a test that gave us a Lexile level. So we knew when they came to us where they started, and then we gave it at the end, and we knew where the kids ended, so we could see that growth. And we did, for the first year, I felt like, because we had these materials at our hand, and everybody in School City we were all teaching the same way, and we were all aligning our practices together. We all felt like we best serviced this student. So it definitely helped us identify and our weaknesses and teach to that. So thank you, Katie, Corey, and Sarah, who found this program for us.
And now we want to share a little bit of their great work, because it's truly the work of the teachers and the students that we want to show you, and their dedication to the process. So the first piece of data we want to show you is the impact analysis from reading aids. So we wanted to see what is the impact of our students using reading aids. Does it have no impact? And that would be your yellow. Does it have a negative impact, meaning the more they use it, it didn't improve their reading results? So we looked at the first iRead 3, then they take iRead 3 again as a retake, and we saw growth from the use of reading aids. So it triangulated that using reading aids increased their iRead 3 scores. Ms. Hickel is going to show more data and what that told us and how it's going to help us continuously improve.
You know we love our data on the front end with decision making, but also on evaluating our work coming out of it. Once again, we saw some bright spots that affirmed the work we were doing and also helped guide us into next steps. So I won't dive into a lot of this, but two really important highlights here. One being you're seeing growth from where the red box is. If you look one box to the left, is our initial pass rate for our students in the first time that they took it at 73%. And then with that intervention of 23 days, you're seeing the next pass rate at an 84.27%. The only other thing I want to highlight on that is our year-to-year growth. You can see from 2018 to 2019, we were able to grow our pass rate by 5.37%. We also wanted to look at where we compared amongst the state passing rate. You can see in 2017-18, we were at a pass rate of 79, whereas the state pass rate was at 87.5%. So we were nearly 8 percentage points behind the state average. With the interventions that we put in place last year, we were able to close that gap, reaching our average of 84%, while the state average remained at 87.5%. So we're trying to close that gap. Maybe. This one is particularly interesting, as you're probably aware, because we've shown you slides before. We like to compare ourselves to our comparable schools, looking at schools of similar and districts of similar size, similar demographics, and makeup. So the ones that we often use are Goshen, East Chicago, and Concord. Some trends that you can see in this data, you can see in 2017, iRead 3 scores were on the rise. Many districts, ourselves in particular, took a dip in 2018, and that's really when we started reevaluating the interventions that we put in place. And what you can see is that while the state average and those other comparable schools have either flatlined or continued to dip, we were able to rebound, once again closing that gap. The last one that I want to highlight is specific to the intervention itself rather than to iRead 3 in general. And what this one is showing you is, because it's a voluntary program that parents and students choose to participate in, we really strongly encourage attendance, and we wanted to measure to make sure that the things we were putting in place were truly having an impact. And we also wanted to look at the students according to how much they participated. So you can see that those students and families that chose not to participate, when they had a retest, they actually showed negative results, so their scores went down. The same was true to a smaller extent for those students who participated in less than 7 sessions. But as you increased the amount of sessions all the way up to those who had perfect or near perfect attendance, you can see the amount of growth that the intervention had. So truly showing the power and the work of the teachers and the students in that program.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Could you go back to the...
Maybe.
So is it the number of sessions attended? Do you have a choice as to the number of sessions you can attend?
No, so it was scheduled for 23, and we ask that when they sign up that they commit to coming to 23, but you can imagine that sometimes things come up or...
So when are the sessions offered?
They're all after school.
Okay,
So
got it.
that's another point. So this is, after our students have had a full day of instruction, after our teachers have had a
Okay.
full day of instruction, and it was a full hour.
Thank you.
Other questions about that particular?
So with what we learned from that implementation with iRead 3 is moving forward, we're going to continue to do level literacy intervention, but we're going to do it throughout the school year to support our struggling readers now and not waiting until they don't pass iRead 3. We have also included reading aids for 3rd graders. So now we have reading aids for kindergarten through 3rd graders all year long. Now we're going to move to a second legislation related to early literacy, and this is just going into implementation this year, and it's dyslexia legislation. The state mandates that we develop and implement a plan to provide a dyslexia screening for all kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade students. This screening process does not diagnose dyslexia. Rather, it identifies deficits that may be characteristics of the disorder. We have to report our screening results to the IDOE and to our families. We also need to employ one authorized reading specialist that has a specific training in dyslexia. Our reading specialist is Barb Miklos. The first step in implementation was we had to determine what assessment we're going to use for our screener that's going to inform our instruction for those that have characteristics of dyslexia. So led by Corey Laban, our Director of School Services and Assessment, we did an assessment audit. We did not want to add another assessment to our kindergarten, first, and second graders. We easily could have to meet the requirement, but we wanted to limit the number of assessments but still get the data that we need for instruction. So through this audit and evaluation of assessments, we selected PALS. PALS is also known as Phonological Awareness Literacy Screening. And PALS replaces 4 of our previous assessments. So we took off 4 of the assessments our kindergarten, first, and second grade students were taking and replaced it with 1, thus increasing the amount of time we have for instruction and meeting the dyslexia legislation. With our selection of PALS, we needed to implement. This was a new assessment for our students and for our staff. So it shows an implementation sequence. We're still in the process of implementation because it just went into effect this year. We started with 2 summer professional learning workshops where our staff learned what is dyslexia, why do we have to screen for it, and then how to use PALS. Next, we focus on coaching days. So we, with a whole team of curriculum and instruction and members of the Exceptional Learners Department, worked with our interventionists, teachers, and principals to actually start administering the assessment. And so we were in classrooms working with students and learning how to administer this assessment and what is this data telling us. After the assessment was given to all our students, kindergarten, first, and second, we had data meetings at each school. So we sat down and looked at the data and said, what is it telling us? Where are our strengths? Where are our needs? And most recently, we've had a professional learning day with PALS that focuses on what instruction should look like for our students that show characteristics of dyslexia and how to make sure that it's data-driven. Once again, we have brought Karen Hicksema. She has been involved every step of the way with PALS and the dyslexia legislation, and we wanted to give an opportunity to share her teacher perspective and the impact on students.
Okay, so this summertime, they offered the professional learning to go over what it was and what we'd be doing, the components of the test, and they offered it first to intervention teachers in the summer. And I was doing summer school, so I went with the classroom teachers. They also pulled classroom teachers in for the training, like 1 per grade level, 1K, 1 first, 1 second, to kind of assist with the testing. And I can't say enough good about this program because, number one, we just saved about 1,000 trees because we don't do any of our testing with paper any longer. It's all on the computer. So you start with like a word test and a word flashes on a screen. The kid either knows it or doesn't know it. You hit a button. It keeps all your data in one place. So if you set your testing papers down in a workroom and you forgot them and you can't remember what level this kid was, or if you need to go up to another level, all you do is click on your computer and everything's right at your fingertips. So the organizational piece alone has helped me tremendously. You can speak a lot about this too. It has phenomenal resources. I'm kind of going out of order because I'm just talking off the cuff, but the resources that we learned about last Friday, we had a professional learning day that focused on the data. So we did all the assessments. It identified kids who were weak in literacy skills. You get this little red thing so you know you don't miss anyone. Like you go through your data as you're doing paperwork and running records and you're like, gosh, should we put this kid in a group or not? The computer, basically informs you on who you need to be instructing and how you need to be instructing them. It even puts them in groups. It groups them so you don't have to do as much of the thinking and planning. So it's a fabulous program. And we've had a lot of good training on it. We've got Corey and Wade and Katie to always, when we went to Hums and Twin Branch to initially learn how to give the tests, they were right there if we had any questions. So it went pretty smoothly. Then when we went back to our buildings, I felt like most of our questions were answered and we could just get down to business and get it done quickly. And I will say this allowed us to get groups up and running quicker than any other year. So we've spent more time instructing kids because of this program. Is there anything I left off? I don't know if I left anything off. Any questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
When you make the judgment that a child needs to be tested. Are the parents brought into this?
So when you say, so we test every student at the beginning of the year to see where they're at with their reading foundational skills. Now, when you say further testing needs to be done because maybe they're identified and they're not responding to the interventions we're providing, then the parents are more involved in that process.
And what does the Indiana Department of Education do with the information that you send them?
As far as we know right now, they publish it. They have told us that they're publishing it in our reading plan, and that's the extent of what we know they're going to do with the data. This is a new process for all schools, so we shall see. We're going to use it to drive continuous improvement and make sure that we're meeting the needs of all our students.
I'm sure you ladies agree, but this is so important for our students. My very best friend, who I just got back from New York City with yesterday, is dyslexic. And she's probably way smarter than me and just an all-around fantastic intellectual. But her dyslexia was found very early, I think in like first grade. And she received help throughout her elementary, middle, and high school careers, and she is now an established landscape architect, and she designs parks for a living, and she has to be able to look at a map and be able to map it correctly and make sure that the scale is correct, and just an incredible amount of work where she still needs to be able to look at the numbers and look back and make sure that they're right or things are in the right order or things that affect her job because she is dyslexic. But she has been given the tools over the past 29 years of her life to be able to do her job efficiently and effectively, and this is really cool. This is going to be really, really great for our students, especially those that do have the characteristics of dyslexia.
I'm very impressed with the systematic and comprehensive approach, and especially the initial assessments, to determine where children are, and the continuous, because you're continuing to reassess throughout the year. Now, when you find deficits in a child and you work with them through the year, did they get to a point where they drop off of the program and you stop? And then do you go back later on to find out whether or not maybe there's been some slippage and they need to be caught back up? Or how do you approach that?
There are tiers both to the intervention, which is the instructional piece, as well as to the assessment. So after an intervention, there's another screening, which helps to identify if the intervention was able to remediate the issue or if they still need additional supports. And so it just kind of keeps escalating up. But if we're doing our job well, that number keeps dwindling and dwindling, so you can really specialize the instruction for those children that need the most intensive supports.
Well, now, if you find, though, that the intervention has addressed the issue, do you, and that might happen, halfway through the school year, or it might be farther along, correct? But
Correct.
if it happens early, do you ever go back, later on to see whether they're...
Yes, I'll let Katie talk about. So we are using this assessment on an ongoing basis because it's not only driving our dyslexia, it's also driving our early reading intervention. So I'll talk about screeners.
Yes, so they will take it 3 times a year, no matter what, kindergarten, first, and second grade. So all students will take it, so we'll see their progress over time.
Okay.
And then during intervention, the PAL system has progress monitoring, so we're not implementing and putting that into another system. It goes all in one system, so we see a child's profile. We are then meeting with the interventionists, as we mentioned, and we're selecting interventions and also accommodations and modifications. So as Amanda shared, she got support, but it looked different. It wasn't the same support maybe another struggling reader got. And so we really want to individualize the type of support and services that we're giving to students and then monitoring that impact. So we're not just giving every kid the same treatment and not monitoring it. We're really trying to be purposeful in selecting the supports and then closely monitoring its impact on the student's learning.
Thank you.
One of the reasons we're the most excited about this is we could have met the legislation requirements and administered the test and focused solely on the dyslexia screener, but we found a more powerful way to use that same tool to meet that objective as well as a much larger learning goal for our early literacy program. So another example of the intentionality of a learning by design, that we're trying to be incredibly intentional with our resources, intentional with the supports that we put in place in our programming. And in the progress monitoring, this is certainly something to highlight because we are getting traction. We're seeing the results immediately for our students, which is exactly what we want.
I want to go back and comment on the iRead intervention results that we've seen. I find that remarkable. I want to commend the teachers and students and all of our curriculum instruction team for your work in identifying the interventions we were going to use, the process in which we were going to use them, because obviously those results are remarkable. And I want to make a statement comparing iRead to what we've experienced with iStep and iLearn, where iRead is a test that really hasn't changed a great deal over, I think, the 10 years Ms. Hicksonbaugh referenced. And it's given us a target that we can actually see and know what it is. And you can see how learning by design then can impact the success for that. It's been more difficult with other standardized testing that we've had because of all the changes that we've experienced over 20 years or more. So I commend you. I think we'll see these same results as we start to see, hopefully, iLearn have some consistency. We can expect these same results because I'm very confident in the team that we have and curriculum and instruction and all the great teachers that we have in this district. So thank you.
Thank you. I for one, very much appreciate these educational talks that you provide to us so we better understand the services we're providing. Let's move into the business and operations section of the agenda. Item 9.01, a recommendation to approve the 2020 School City of Mishawaka budget. Mr. Newman.
Thank you, President Curry, Superintendent Barker, and members of the board. Before we move on with this agenda item, I did want to remind board members that we will have a special board meeting next Wednesday, October 16th at 7 o'clock. At that meeting, we'll hold a public hearing for the 2019 bond sale, adopt 2 resolutions pertaining to that bond sale, and we will also hold our public meeting on the tentative agreement with the MEA. So again, just a reminder that we will need at least 3 board members next Wednesday at 7 p.m. So thank you.
Here, correct?
Here, yes.
Here.
This evening, it's the final step requiring board action as it pertains to the 2020 budget. If board members recall, we held a budget work session on September 11th and kind of outlined the debt service, education, operation, and our 2 referendum funds. We then held a public hearing on September 25th, and for your approval this evening is the adoption of the 2020 budget, and I'm recommending adoption as presented.
So moved.
I move for adoption of the budget as presented.
Second.
All right, been moved and seconded to adopt the 2020 budget as presented. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to item 9.02, recommendation to approve the 2020 capital projects plan. Again, Mr. Newman.
Thank you, President Curry. Similar to the last board agenda item, the capital projects plan was presented to the board on September 11th. We held a public hearing on September 25th, and for your approval this evening is the adoption of the 2020 capital projects plan.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adopt the proposed 2020 capital projects plan. Is any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 9.03, recommendation to approve the 2020 bus replacement plan. Mr. Newman.
Thank you, President Curry. And finally, the 2020 bus replacement plan was presented at the September 11th meeting with a public hearing held on September 25th. And for your approval this evening is a resolution to adopt that 2020 bus replacement plan.
Move for approval of the 2020 bus replacement plan.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the proposed 2020 bus replacement plan. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Takes us into the final section of the agenda under communications, item 10.01, public announcements. The next regular meeting of the Board of School Trustees will be held on October 23, 2019, beginning at 7 o'clock p.m. at John Young Middle School, 1801 North Main Street in Mishawaka, Indiana. The elementary parent-teacher conferences will be taking place on October 17, 2019. There is no school for elementary students on that day. The fall break will take place October 18th through the 21st. There is no school for students on those days. The administration office and the Mishawaka High School office will remain open. Is there anything else to come before the board? If not, we are adjourned. Thank you all for attending and safe travels home.